want to call our MPP, Mr. Clark, to introduce our keynote speaker for this morning. Mr. Clark. Yep, just need the clicker. Cam, do you have the clicker?
Cam, we need the clicker. So fantastic. Cam, thanks so much for the wonderful speech. It was a great opportunity. MP Barrett and I had to tour Votari. I also like the fact that because of your previous connection with Steam Whistle, that's how I ended the tour with him. So it was fantastic. So our next, so as Anne alluded to at the start, we've been very, very fortunate in recent years to have some very dynamic speakers. And I am so excited with our speaker today. We didn't have the challenges we had a few years ago with Minister Bethlenfalvy when we had a terrible snowstorm and I found out that he had left the 401, which didn't seem like a good idea for me at the time, but we got him here. We've had Minister Fedeli here virtually, Minister Sarkaria, and last year, literally days after he got the portfolio, we had Minister David Piccini here speaking at this very conference. But today, I'm so pleased that we were able to have the Honourable Stephen Lecce, the member for King Vaughan, and the Minister of Energy and Electrification here. He is a tremendous speaker, a great friend. He's a great friend to this riding when he was in the education portfolio. And every time I appear at his desk, he's always sort of suspicious on why I'm there, first of all. But second of all, he's always been so responsive to this riding. And the bill and the procurement that our government is involved in right now is in very, very good hands with the Honourable Stephen Lecce. As I said in my introduction, I think the bill and the procurement are messages that have long been wanted here in Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes. As some of you know, Minister Lecce started his career at the federal level under Prime Minister Harper. And I know that both MP Barrett and MP Barrett's predecessor, the late Gord Brown, really appreciate the fact that we've got such a top-notch member of Premier Ford's cabinet here today. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a Leeds Grenville welcome to the Honourable Stephen Lecce.
All right, good morning. It's good to be with you all. Thank you so much, Steve, for the warm introduction and frankly, your leadership and mentorship at Queen's Park. It's good to see you. Good to see our Member of Parliament here as well, representing us in Ottawa, standing up for common sense. So thank you for your leadership. I want to thank the wardens, including 2 hours into this endeavor, and congratulate you on your service and the chain of office you assumed just yesterday. It's still cold, you got to warm it up. And I understand that Warden Peckford, I want to thank her. I know she's not physically present, but I do want to thank her for her 4 years of service and leadership. I understand she's a Swiftie. And I must admit to you, I may see her tonight because I'm bringing my nieces. So I will walk back, Steve, if there's a snowstorm, because my nieces will literally kill me if I don't get there. They care more about her than me, increasingly, I've learned. But and just thank you all. Thank you most particularly to the leadership team that have welcomed me. And I just will say, this is not my first time in this community. I've been here many times. In my former tenure as Minister of Education, I was there for 5 long years in that wonderful ministry. But we did a lot together. And I reflect on your old alma mater, Westminster, where we expanded that wonderful school and built a new French Catholic school, which I know is important in North Grenville, and likewise Swiftwater that's open in Brockville. That is just the beginning. That's just in the last 5 years, and there's much more to do. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to return to talk to you about how we're building complete communities and how we're making sure it's affordable for the families we serve. And, you've heard the news. You're very self-aware of the fact that we need a lot more power in this province. We are facing an economic renaissance. There is significant economic demand, foreign investment, greenhouse expansion, and we need to make sure that energy is affordable and abundant, clean and reliable for Ontarians. And that's why, for the first time in our province's history, we are taking a very different approach to planning for tomorrow and thinking about our future. The Independent Electricity Systems Operator is forecasting a 75% energy demand forecast by year 2050. That is massive when it comes to the amount of megawatts we need to generate for Ontarians. And I will tell you, many governments east and west of us in this country, and likewise just to the south in the Great Lakes, they are scrambling to secure energy. But we have a generational plan we're looking for with a 25-year lens, and I'll speak more about that. But we're ready for the challenge. And you'll recall 20 odd years ago, the then Premier Eves announced that we'll be phasing out coal. And the successive governments, to their credit, we worked, this is a bipartisan achievement, but it was our government 20 odd years ago that said, look, we want to be in the game as a clean energy powerhouse in the country. We want to rid the province of coal dependence. And a decade ago was the last time we actually burned a piece of coal. We're one of the few jurisdictions in this country that can claim that. And as a consequence of that action, we now have one of the cleanest energy grids on earth. Like literally, we have one of the cleanest grids, not just in the country or in the continent, among all industrialized states. And that's a huge achievement because it's not just attracting investment, it's obviously improving the quality of life for those of us that want to make sure our kids are set up for success in a healthy province and country. And so 90% of our grid is roughly non-emitting. Nuclear is 50% of it, 25% is hydro. We have renewables mixed in. So we have literally 90% of our grid is using non-emitting energy. And nuclear plays a fundamental role along with many other sources of energy. And I want to speak a bit about that. The context of nuclear energy and why it matters is we need reliable baseload power. I often hear about, the importance of having a competitive mix of energy is really important for our province. But when I mean baseload, I mean reliable power that is always available for our people when we need it, not intermittent, not predicated on the wind or on the sun. And renewables play a critical role in our energy mix. And I'll speak about how our government launched the largest competitive procurement in that space. But we need baseload power. Your farmers, your businesses, and your families depend on it, and we will deliver it, which is why we're leaning into this non-emitting source of energy, which, by the way, is one of the most affordable energy sources that exist on the grid. Not my opinion, because I know I'm the new guy in this ministry. The Ontario Energy Board publishes the schedule of prices per megawatt hour. It is one of the most affordable options after hydroelectric. And we believe in both energy sources that are consequential. But I want to talk just about the merits of nuclear because it really is the future of our country. And I think most of the world, including in Europe, where you saw countries move away from nuclear power, are now moving back to it because they realize if you want to decarbonize, if you want to grow your economy, if you want to have non-emitting energy, if you want to clean your grid, whatever your imperative may be, you need nuclear energy to do it. You need a non-emitting, reliable, 24/7 enduring source of energy. And so why I speak about this as a value proposition to the province and the country is because without it, it's the equivalent today of removing 15 million vehicles from the road this year alone. 80 million tons of GHGs, greenhouse gas emissions, are removed as a consequence of our nuclear energy, for which 18 of 19 power plants are in our province here in the country. So we see this as a success story for the environment, for the economy, and for the affordability of the people we serve. And thus, you're going to see a lot more emphasis on that. And we've attracted $45 billion of investment, EV investment. I thought the timing of the last presentation, and I looked forward to the next presentation, there's a bit of a theme here about how do we lean in to the electrification of our economy and industry. In my ministry, the title changed. It used to be the Minister of Energy. It's now Energy and Electrification because we're using clean electricity to displace coal. We're now producing green steel because our arc furnaces are now being powered by clean energy instead of coal in this province. It's a huge achievement, but we attracted that investment not in spite of, but because it's a clean grid, and we want to keep it clean. And the program that our government and Premier, and the one that has been strongly championed by MPP Clark, I will tell you, within our caucus, is the idea of having an even cleaner grid over the next 20 years. And we're going to get there. We are actually going to exceed the existing percentage of non-emitting energy. We're going to get right down to near net zero, not because we were forced upon it, not because the feds imposed it, not because of a carbon tax or some sort of pricing scheme on carbon. We're doing this just by literally expanding non-emitting nuclear energy. We are going to deliver it through technology, not taxation, as the solution to some of the great environmental and economic challenges facing the province. And I think it's important we recognize that because we've attracted Stellantis in Windsor, Volkswagen in St. Thomas, Honda and Alliston, the list goes on. These are game-changing investments. I mean, for those communities, these will be jobs for their children, let alone for themselves. And I think that is a huge achievement of government to create the conditions for investment to flow into the province. Because look, Steve mentioned this. Just a decade ago, it was sort of becoming mainstream for some political parties to talk about moving away from the manufacturing sector, the need for a service sector economy. And that is a total abdication of what government is supposed to be about, championing the economic interests of working people. Because we have repatriated every job that left our province because it was a very, frankly, anti-growth and anti-business place to sort of start up, to scale up, to want to invest. We've brought every one of those jobs back plus some, where we're now roughly 800,000 net new jobs created, and manufacturing employment has been increased over the tenure of our 5 years because we didn't turn our backs on manufacturing. We leaned in to the North American supply chain, to the credible benefits of a team Canada, US, North America approach to energy and to industrial integration. And I'm proud that we have reindustrialized the southern part and eastern part of Ontario because we believe in the workforce and we believe in the value add of made in Ontario to the world. And that approach has been very successful. But I speak about nuclear in the context of attracting investment. You often hear about what does it cost? And most jurisdictions cannot claim the achievement that we have delivered here in Ontario, where we're building on time and on budget. The largest nuclear expansion in North America is happening before our eyes, and it's being done on time and on budget. And I keep repeating this to jurisdictions everywhere in the world because they can't believe it. The French and the British, they are G7 allies, they're shared democracies. We respect them, we work closely with them as Five Eye partners. But what they can't say that we're doing is building anything on time and on budget. Large scale or even small modular reactors, we are leading the way in this respect. And it's a source of pride as a Canadian, frankly, that Canadian technology, when I think about CANDU reactors among others, are now leading the world in this type of energy transition, moving away from Vladimir Putin's natural gas to Canadian technology to help power the world. That is a source of pride for the son of immigrants who came to the country wanting to leave a legacy. And that's why I think about the work we're doing within our province and around the world. And at Bruce Power, we're going to be expanding Bruce another 4,800 megawatts of clean, non-emitting power. 4,800 megawatts is equivalent to producing power for roughly 4.8 million homes. Clean power, reliable power, which we're putting on the map through Bruce. At Pickering, right? Pickering is a nuclear station that, the former government wanted us to close. In fact, they were on a path to close it. We've extended the life of that asset, and our intention is to refurbish it for another 30 years. That will add billions of dollars to our GDP. And likewise at Darlington, I just stood there a few days ago, really awesome announcement for Ontario. We brought a unit back on that we refurbished 5 months ahead of schedule. It is an unheard of statement that we are doing this below budget, ahead of schedule, and that refurbishment adds a $90 billion lift to our GDP by having that available for 30 years of enduring power, another 4,800 megawatts of clean power. So we're proud of this. The other thing we're proud of is the fact that we are the first jurisdiction in the G7 to be building the small modular reactor. The first SMR in the industrialized world is being built in this province. There's the first mover's advantage, which we are initiating. And I really believe that these small modular reactors will create a massive export opportunity for the supply chain in this region and frankly, right across the province and country. And I believe that's a huge value add as well, because what we're literally doing, and I was in Poland, and I'll speak more about this shortly, but the world wants to decouple their dependence on these despotic regimes. They want Canadian resources and technology and ingenuity to solve some of the great challenges that they're facing. And we have that capacity. We just need to get it to market and get our resources to Tidewater. But one of the big things we have really undertaken is being on time, on budget, and creating that discipline with OPG and Bruce and all of the sort of subsidiaries that we work with that build it out. And the other element that I think is important is as we look to energy procurement. So yes, nuclear power will play a critical role. We've made that clear. We've even prescribed it into a bill that's before the House that the government House leader has been moving along, the Affordable Energy Act. That's our legislation. You'll remember the Green Energy Act. That was the former government's legislation. And frankly, the contrast of those bills could not be more clear. We don't sole source and we don't decide based on the ideology of a minister of the day. We use an independent authority to do competitive procurements that have brought down prices by 30% for ratepayers. That is what matters. The benchmark of our success are our bills lower today. Have they been affordable and frankly stabilized the hydro bills that frankly went up by 300% just a decade ago? And that was a shameful legacy. It drove many middle-class families and fixed-income pensioners into energy poverty. And we just simply cannot go back to that. So yes, we're using competitive procurements. We're using a different approach where we say the bottom line is affordability. We want it to be clean, yes, but it needs to be affordable. And that's really the North Star that's guiding this procurement. The largest energy procurement in Canadian history was launched this summer when we launched the 5,000 megawatts of power, this procurement that represents roughly a power for 5 million people. And 3,000 megawatts were announced this year were being secured for storage, for battery storage. And battery storage project of its kind is happening here in Edwardsburg Cardinal, where we're investing $750 million to build the largest, Tori's very pleased about this, I see, the largest battery storage plant in the country is happening right here in this community and in this riding. And I'm very proud to report we're moving along on this project. It will store 411 megawatts of clean power, like 400,000 people of power could be stored. A major investment. I mean, frankly, the largest investment of its kind is happening here. And that's the largest battery storage fleet in the country. It will be the third largest on the continent after Texas. So we are well positioned to build storage because we want to create some viability for renewables, because we are technology agnostic. I didn't come here supporting one resource over another. Yes, I spoke about the merits of nuclear. That's just because it's the obvious baseload option that Ontarians have leaned into for generations. But I came here taking a different approach than the government's past, saying let the market dictate based on affordability, because we cannot allow people to be driven into energy poverty. We have a strong position on the carbon tax. That's 25% premium on your bills. That's not an abstract issue. It's not a hashtag. This is a 25% premium to what we pay today. So we think that needs to be dealt with and frankly scrapped. But that's not an issue I alone could do. Michael, where we depend on you, 25% savings can be achieved if you're able to get your way. But look, what we can do in this province is procure based on competition, drive prices down, and frankly be pragmatic and respectful of the taxpayers and ratepayers we serve. So we're going to build that project. And Steve Clark was a driving force. This project, to be fair, happened before I got here, but I've heard all about it. I know more about this project than I ever do, but I know it's going to matter to your economy and to the energy security of this entire region. And so we will get this done together. I also want to speak about on the long-term procurement we launched as a commitment, because we have a large, proud, intergenerational agricultural community in this riding, and likewise in my riding. And a township of King is in my riding, with a beautiful rural community, all in the Oak Ridges Moraine. I'm very committed to preserving the family farm in my community, like I know Steve Clark is and you all are here in Leeds, Grenville. And why does it matter? Well, what we did is we learned lessons of governments past. We put a regime in place that protects agricultural farmland. We are prohibiting energy expansion on prime agricultural lands, on class 1, 2, and 3 lands. We now require an agricultural impact assessment. And for the first time, we're putting wardens and mayors and councillors in the driver's seat by saying, if Queen's Park wants to impose their will in your community, as they did many times in the past, we are going to require municipalities to provide a municipal support resolution, putting you and local government and local democracy in the driver's seat to say, put your hand up first before some bureaucrat or politician in downtown Toronto decides what's best for your community. So we've really changed the game of how we respect farmland and how we empower municipalities to have a say. And I think that's just good government and the right thing to do. But we talk a lot about the demand forecast. We talk about the challenges. We have a significant growth. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just simply to say industrial demand is going to increase by 50% by 2030. 50% just in industry. We're going to have household growth, the amount of homes coming on the grid and population intensification, 30% increase by 2050. And EV adoption is going to put a 37% pressure on the grid because we're seeing rise of people moving to EV vehicles. So we introduced the Affordable Energy Act. The basis of it was really designed around creating an integrated long-term energy plan for the first time in Ontario's history. And I'm not suggesting any government is perfect or politician. I mean, I'm self-aware. But look, governments of the past used this 4-year siloed approach where we had natural gas being run by one entity, we had electricity being run by another one, and then we had fuels being run by a different entity. And none of them were required by law to work together, speak together. There was no synergization between these resources. And yet we're paying the price for siloed government. And it's just frustrating as the new guy walking in saying, why don't we create legislation that binds some long-term integrated vision for the province where we're actually working backwards from the economic needs of Ontario so that our kids actually have clean, affordable energy for our children and our grandchildren. And that's why we launched the Affordable Energy Act. Steve has been a huge champion of this, and I'm grateful to him for helping to shepherd this through the House. But this bill will codify and commit to affordable energy, a long-term plan, and the integration of our resources for the first time in Ontario history. And I'm very proud of that because we need more of it. And it also unlocks energy efficiency because currently the law, the existing statute suggests that you could only provide energy efficiency programming to communities that are constrained. Well, that's 30% of the population. So the rest of us want to be in the game. I want to reduce my footprint. I want to save cash on my bills. Why can't I have access to an energy efficiency program? Like you may remember under the Harper government where, yes, I did proudly work for 5.5 years, but you may remember during the recession, Canada's economic action plan, you may remember the home renovation tax credit, right? It incented people to put a few bucks in, the government supported you, and families were able to do a lot of updates to their home. It spurred local economies, it supported the Canadian supply chain. Bottom line is it was a win-win-win. Revenues increased and families benefited from improvements to their home. I think of that type of program that we want to provincialize so that everyone could access it. So that bill, the Affordable Energy Act, allows the province for the first time to extend energy affordability programming to every household in Ontario. And you will see in the weeks ahead, we will be announcing the largest energy conservation initiative in Canadian history that will save families money. It will reduce energy on the grid, and it achieves that beneficial win-win outcome we want for all of us. But that's the type of leadership we're initiating. The other element that I've got to give total credit to Steve Clark, because he drove this policy before I even knew it was a problem, is on the first is what we call the last mile. Many of you will know you were trying to connect your farm or maybe a residential development or your business to the grid. Sometimes it could cost like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to connect to the grid, and it's very prohibitive. And I think from a residential perspective, who pays the cost? Well, those dollars trickle down to the homeowner. So that young family or that new Canadian is now paying additional costs. And I give this example, a real example. There's a residential development. There's a $20 million connection cost for 1,000 homes. That would have been $20,000 per unit was going to be paid by the from one of your kids trying to buy a home. And the GTHA, 20 grand that would have been allowed if we didn't act today with a reform that said, why are we forcing that development to pay 100% of the cost opposed to the energy that they're using? Because under the old system, if you were extending the grid, they pay 100% opposed to just the load, just what they're using. They may only be using 10% of that transmission expansion, yet they had to pay all of it. It was the first mover's disadvantage, ironically. So we changed that. We've amortized the assets over a longer period. We've come up with a 15-year, not 5-year cost recovery period. All this to say is that $20,000 under this scenario goes down from $20,000 to $4,000, saving that family, not an abstract person, like our kids, $16,000 on their home. And that alone may not get them in the housing game, but it helps. If every ministry did their part, we can really save families money. And I think that's really important. And I thank you because this was your idea. I just ran with it, Steve, and it worked out well. So I'm happy to take the credit. But I'm just saying, everyone loves it. But I'm just saying I'm grateful frankly, I'll take any one of your ideas because we need good ideas in government, and there's no monopoly on a good idea. I'll work with anyone at any level of government because housing is an issue. One of the reasons why I got into this at the crazy old age of 31, I thought, who's speaking for me in this government and who's speaking for the next generation of our province? And so that's why I was crazy enough to get into this and crazy enough to do it again. But I will say the last point of this bill is it enables the expansion of EV charging. And I know I'm going over time, so I'm going to try to wrap it up. But EV charging is very important. And look, we just heard about the merits of EV on aquatic side of it. We're going to hear about on the land side. But look, it is the future. We expect 1 million EV vehicles on the roads by 2035. So this is, it doesn't mean that we're all driving an EV and no one expects that, but we're projecting a significant uptake of EVs if we build the infrastructure, if we make it easier for people to drive, particularly outside of Toronto. So I launched a program that excluded Toronto. frankly, it was only a program, $70 odd million for communities under 170,000. So it really focused on rural, remote, and suburban communities because that's where the infrastructure is needed the most. The cities have that advantage. Most other communities don't. So we really focus on everyone but the big cities, focus on communities like yours and frankly like mine, and think of King Township as a case study that benefited from this investment. And I'm proud that in Brockville and Prescott and many other communities, 35 stations are being built in this community as announced by Steve Clark last week. And that's a brilliant achievement as we build out that green infrastructure for our EV drivers. I do want to spend a minute on EV. This slide has been up for like 12 minutes, which is my team's way of saying, get to this slide, Lecce, hurry up. But I wanted to talk about EVs because I know it's hard not to talk about, that investment we just announced a week ago. The idea of becoming a clean energy superpower. This is Canada's moment, I really do believe. The world is looking for our resources and our technology. They do not want to be buying. I was in Poland last week, in Estonia. The Minister of Energy in Ukraine I met with the Minister of Industry in Poland and the head of nuclear in Estonia. Everywhere we go, it's the exact same refrain. Help us end our dependence on Russian natural gas and petroleum in that order. And you have the ability. You've got the 5th largest reserve of natural gas on Earth, which could be liquefied and sent to them. They're dying for that, but we don't offer that in Ontario. We do offer clean tech. We've got the technology, the small modular reactors and the CANDU reactors and a variety of other advantages. So we went there to announce deals, export agreements, where the Polish government and the Estonian government signed agreements with the province, with OPG, and we returned with commitments to help move our SMRs and export them into that foreign market, which is a big achievement. And I'm very proud of the fact that Canada will be stepping up to help solve some of the great issues of energy security facing Eastern Europe and other parts of the world. My final thought is my job in this ministry is to infuse a sense of ambition and long-term considerations for how we build. I think the energy space is dynamic, but on the government side, it is bureaucratic. And I'm here not to defend the status quo. I'm actually here to be quite the disruptor in our ministry. There's other synonyms for disruptor, I'm sure. Members are, I'm not going to say there's 2 words that come to mind. But look, I'm self-aware that that's my mandate, then I'm up for the job because this ministry needs a sort of a light of fire under its behind to get people moving. We need to be way more ambitious. We just really lean into our clean advantage, and we need to be prepared to fight for the energy security. And we're up against, President Trump was elected, and that's the will of the American people. We'll work with any government. But protectionism will likely rise. And so we have to be on guard to defend our jobs and to defend our energy jobs as well. And the Premier, Minister Fedeli, Steve Clark, myself, we're all gearing up to be in DC and be in the US markets to vigorously advocate for a continental Canada-US supply chain where we protect our jobs and protect our prosperity. But there's huge opportunities in the US and in foreign markets, our first priorities for the people of Ontario. And I just want to say thank you very meaningfully for allowing me to come back to speak to you today and really give you a sense of where we're going and how we're going to get there as we build clean, reliable, affordable energy for the people of Ontario. Thank you so very much. I appreciate this.
You're good to do Q&A?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, if you want to stay there.
Sure.
We have 2 people out in the audience that are doing the Q&A. And just put your hand up and they will find you. It just makes it easier so everyone can hear the question. So if you want a question, put your hand up. And so Tina, looks like you've got 1 mic, and we'll go to the next question thereafter. Tina?
Thanks, Anne. So building and maintaining the energy infrastructure, I'm right here, sorry. The energy, to build and maintain the energy infrastructure that you're going to need, you'll need a steady pipeline of jobs and skilled trades, especially in rural areas. How do you plan to fill that need?
Yeah, that's a really important question because we can build all the generation and all the transmission, but like the human capital is the missing sort of piece to this. So we are thinking about that. So we're working with the Minister Piccini, Minister of Labor, on how do we create a skills development program specifically for energy expansion. The independent electricity systems operator, just to put like a number to this type of plan, this is when we had a 60% demand forecast in the spring. It's now 75%. So this number is going to be going up. But they forecasted a $300 to $400 billion investment required in the next 25 years. Like we're having almost $500 billion, $500 billion of capital. So that means we need a significant workforce to deliver it. So we are thinking about how we create greater integration within our colleges, our apprenticeship program, and in a high school level program. And in my former role, I guess there's some advantages to have been there for all these years, is that my seatmate, Jill Dunlop, the now minister, we're already working on really helping to get more focus on nuclear energy. We did this in the curriculum when I was there in the science curriculum, but there's more we can do, particularly with underrepresented groups, of getting more women into nuclear, because we see that there's still very significant gender differentials. We want to see more kids, whoever they are, getting into the space, but we're going to start young. And we have, I think what you'll see in the new year is a plan to lean in on our homegrown Canadian talent, as well as having more focus. I'm the son of immigrants. I'm for immigration. I just believe they've got to have skills that align with the economic needs of Ontario. This isn't like we're going to open the door to anyone. Let's make it about the needs of Canada and make it work for both of us. Let's make sure they come with a job, not with not having employment, which leads to social challenges for the state. So we're also looking at reorienting the labor market so that when we bring immigrants in, that they can come in with exactly the skills we need and match them with the jobs that are available. And we have a ton of civilian jobs to build these plants, and then we need technical jobs, because nuclear is not a non-technical space, especially when you start to go into as you start to build out these fleets. So it's a fair question. We're on it. Yeah.
Okay, Mayor DeSantis.
Thank you, Ian. Minister Lecce, it's an absolute honor to have you here. I think you're the 52nd minister that MPP Clark's been able to deliver to the riding. So thanks for coming today. Question revolves around...
but number one in his heart, he said.
That's right.
I think that's what he said. I made that up, but I hope he said that.
100%
Sorry,
sure.
Tori.
And to add on to your 1,300 charging stations, we got 9 in Edwardsburg Cardinal, and we're thankful for that.
Awesome.
So question revolves around, sitting in front of you are Will and Ben from Potentia, which is the Skyview 2 BESS project, as you mentioned before. We're proud to have them here as well. But we've, like many of the mayors that are here today, we've struggled to secure enough energy to be part of the fantastic growth that's seen all across Ontario. You mentioned 800,000 jobs coming back, and that's fantastic work and a fantastic commitment of MPP Clark and the Ford government. But we're still struggling to secure that. Last year we had the folks from Enbridge here, and we were trying to secure pipeline expansion for the Port of Johnstown. Unsuccessful. We ended up using propane instead of gas. So the question is, we did a municipal support resolution to help Potentia come to Edwardsburg Cardinal. Mm-hmm. We're proud of being able to do that. We want to do our part for Eastern Ontario. What can we do to be part of that?
Yeah, so a few things there. The first is there are a lot of communities where, based on the transmission system, not even the generation, like we've got the power, but we can't get it to the right places. We don't have the voltage infrastructure to get it there, which is imperiling economic growth. This is a problem, and it can't be a problem because the Premier will say that's an unacceptable answer. Build out the infrastructure necessary. So we have so far been able to avert scenarios where a large investor is trying to come into a community. We said we can't do it because of power. We've been able to work around that. But the reason why this plan is actually almost existential, that if we don't get on with it and be really ambitious and serious and move with the sense of speed that the economy, the dynamism in the economy, we're going to be left behind, because the capital will flow to the path of least resistance. And in the US, they don't give a hoot. Michigan, 30% is coal-fired. They'll go to 40% if required. They just don't care. I shouldn't, I'm sure some of them do, but overwhelmingly they don't. For them, it's about just cheap grit. Virginia, like 90% is coal. They're still mining it. This is just the nature of that system, and money will flow potentially the path of resistance. But I will say, investors increasingly want the grid to be green. The $43 billion we attracted was not in spite of the fact that we eliminated coal and have one of the cleanest grids. Often they cited it because of it. Investors are looking for cleaner opportunities. So you pose the question of how can municipalities, small and large, but particularly in rural Ontario, play a role. The first is municipal support resolutions in favor of energy expansion puts you in the driver's seat to see local community benefits flow, because usually these projects come with community benefit agreements, which means usually money or infrastructure investments for your community. The second is we're going to need spaces to build generation. It could be hydrogen. It could be small modular reactors. It could be the supply chain to build out those small modular reactors or nuclear. So being willing to enable energy expansion means we're bringing jobs into your community. And look, on to the point about Enbridge and just the slowness of government, you've cited a problem that I'm not going to defend. I'm going to say that is a real issue in many parts of Ontario. It's systemic in much of our agencies, boards, and commissions. And it is our job to wake up the system and remind them that we're not in 2005 anymore, where we have too much energy. We're selling it. We're sending it to the US at 3 cents a kilowatt hour because we're just so fortunate to have an overabundance. We're not spilling energy anymore. Now we desperately need it. And there's a competition for it. So I'm going to take away from this discussion that we got to do better in this respect. And we didn't pass a bill, but Parliament will hopefully pass a bill in the coming weeks, which will deliver a sense of accountability on those agencies, boards, and commissions to come up with a greater sense of speed and a bias of action to get things done for Ontarians.
I believe Eleanor is right there.
I have two questions, but I'll just ask, and if you can answer one or two of them, that's great.
Sure.
Pickering, does it not have to be shut down before you can refurbish it? And will it not be 10 years or more before it would be back online,
Right.
creating a shortage in that time frame? The other question is, net metering is a very inexpensive way to have power where you need the power,
Yes.
and then using the grid at night when the power is cheap and not selling it to the US. But the stumbling block, and you mentioned it earlier about that last mile,
Yes.
is I went to do it. The solar part of it was reasonable price until I talked to Hydro, and it was going to cost as much
To connect.
to have Hydro do what they should have done in the first place, and that would be upgrade the transformer and the lines. So that's the other side of it. If you wanted people to do that, and new subdivisions and everything should be doing that when they're put into place, have some portion of theirs run by solar or wind so that they're not so reliant on the grid.
Okay, so very quickly, Pickering, you are right. So the Canadian National Nuclear Commission just announced that it's safe to operate Pickering for 2 additional years, which we are doing. At that point, the government and cabinet will make a decision on the extension, but we have, telegraphed our intention, so long as it is economically viable and safe, to refurbish that asset for another 30 years. It will be offline. Usually they're not a decade refurbishments. They take, it could be anywhere between 3 to 5 years, depending on the amount of units, but you are right. And so people often say, oh my goodness, the percentage of non-emitting power of clean power has gone down. That means we're going in the wrong direction. But what it really means is that a lot of our nuclear fleet, to be specific, 3,400 megawatts of our nuclear fleet is right now being refurbished, or is going to be refurbished, like a Pickering. So it creates this sort of dynamic where we're using short-term supply like natural gas as an interim measure, and other renewables, which we launched this big procurement. So, but the long-term game is once these nuclear fleets are back and our new nuclear energy is layered in, we're actually going to be exceeding the highest percentage of non-emitting energy. The highest ever was 93%. We're going to go well beyond that under our program, which I think is a very good outcome. On behind the metering, I will say, so I mentioned this high level, but I wasn't as specific as you were, so I'm happy you gave me this opportunity. So when I talked about energy conservation, the largest program ever, money in your pockets, what that essentially means, I want you to think about how government could reimagine behind the metering, where every one of you, people, municipalities, farms, and small, medium-sized enterprises, where government could give you an incentive to put solar and or battery on your roof to reduce your dependence on the grid. That will help you cut down your bills anywhere between 30 to 50%. So you save cash, we save power because we need it for peak purposes, and it's a win-win outcome. So you speak about a wonderful idea that I am totally running with, and you're going to see us announce this in the coming weeks, where we're going to literally give all Ontarians, not 30%, but every family, including every farm in rural Ontario, the ability to, if they want, get an incentive to produce things like solar on the roof that allows them to reduce their dependence on grid. And that's a good achievement and frankly common sense outcome that is good for the environment, good for the grid, and good for your bills.
Super, thank you. And over to you here, sorry.
This might not be the most popular discussion, but I just wanted to say I'm sad to see you go as Minister of Education. However, you talked about bringing in more jobs and bringing in more families. In hindsight, what are we going to do to
allow those families, you talked about young women, that sort of thing. How are you going to allow those people to access childcare, and what kind of things are going to be brought in place to help out with that as well as the energy initiative?
Yeah, I think, well, thank you for your first comment. I wouldn't say that's a rare comment. I mean, I don't know what you guys think. Don't stop looking at Twitter, okay? You know, I haven't had a hashtag fire Lecce in a couple of months and it feels good, okay? But sort of I feel nostalgic. Maybe I want one of those after all. But look, you raise an important point. I mean, often this is not 9 to 5 work. I mean, running a nuclear plant is 24/7. So how do we create, going back to the question of sort of human capital and human resources, how do we create an incentive for families, particularly I think of moms, how could they get in the game if we're talking about shift work without childcare? And so I was proud, that we signed a deal to secure a 50% reduction in childcare fees for the first time in Canadian history. That saves an average family anywhere between $6,000 to $10,000 every year, every child. Now, there are challenges with this program, getting into the program. There's wait lists, so there's a lot of unintended consequences with it. So it's not perfect, and it isn't a provincial program. It's a national program, but we signed on. We were concerned. We were reluctant. We were the last in the country to do so. And everyone's like, why are you number 10? You should be number 1. It's like, because this deal, it has big gaps, and it's gonna result in exactly what's transpiring: wait lists and a lack of flexibility, because there's a lot of parents who use for-profit childcare, and these are often always run by women. 95% of for-profit childcare is run by a mom. They're small businesses. They usually have an average of 2 childcare operators. These are not like corporate America. These are not Walmarts. These are small mom and pop enterprises that have the smallest margins, and we should be supporting those for-profit businesses because they're frankly run almost as a nonprofit. But that's not what you talked about. And now I'm going back to my old assignment. I haven't done that in 4 months, and I don't want to do that again. So what I'm simply going to say is, when we built the Honda plant, when we talked to their business model, we actually were at the table from a childcare perspective to build a childcare center within the plant, which is not really done in Ontario or Canada. That's not that integration. They coexist. We're actually thinking about how do we integrate childcare in the workforce to make it a lot easier and seamless for families, whatever the situation is, single parents, whatever the arrangement of a modern family is, that these kids have a place to have care while their parents could go work and be productive. So more of that is what we need. And I'm frankly be open to any ideas you may have about how we make the system work better for young families, for moms, and for caregivers in the province. Yeah, there's more we can do here.
All righty, thank you so much. I'm calling upon the warden to thank you. Come on up,
thank you all.
Karina. And we have a token of appreciation. Just hang right there for 1 second.
So thank you very much, Minister Lecce. I can absolutely tell that you're very energized, pardon the pun, by your ministry, and being a disturber of, I was very politically correct there. I'm not going to say it. I think that as a politician and as members of our community here, they hear a lot of talk. And I know that our member, MPP Clark, has been a huge champion of this last mile legislation. And so for you to say that you appreciate the partnership, we all know here, without partnership, nothing happens. So thank you for recognizing that Eastern Ontario is a place that has great potential and opportunity, and supporting us to make sure that things get done. And thank you for taking the time, and I hope you are not late for Ms. Swift. Thank you.
And yes, so we had a little whisper that they liked, Mr. Lecce likes a little baked goods.
You wouldn't believe it, but I do.
And so Graham Bakeries, we have a special bag for you, because some of the products in the other one is liquid that Mr. Clark will have to bring to you because you're on a plane today. But these are apparently plane worthy.
All right, I'm sending you my good life bill after this.
Oh, move to light. Thank you.
I'll bring you your liquid products.
There we go.
Hold that. I feel like
There we
Vanna
go.
White.